great, thank you. So I was just mentioning that June is Orca Awareness Month, and today we have two guests from the Department of Fisheries and Oceans Whale Protection Team, Willie Jensen and Morgan Van Kirk. And I'd like to start off by asking each of you how you got started in wildlife conservation. Willie, can I start with you?
Sure. So I started with Fisheries and Oceans Canada 28 years ago in enforcement, and there was just a huge interest in that. My background actually is in salmon enhancement. I spent 11 years at Nanaimo River Hatchery, and it was really interesting to, raise the salmon and be able to experience that side of it. But there was also a lot of issues happening, and I wanted just to become more involved with the actual enforcement of the regulations and that sort of thing, and just expand out more. So then I came over to enforcement, and 3 years ago joined the newly formed Whale Protection Unit here in Victoria.
Great. And Morgan, how about you? When did you first get involved in wildlife conservation?
So I'm definitely just a baby when it comes to this compared to Willie's experience. I actually was in a different law enforcement agency before this for just over 10 years. And I got a golden opportunity to move over to this newly formed unit as well. Prior to this, I've spent my whole life on the West Coast. I grew up on a sailboat and fishing, and just, it's part of me, this coast, and I saw the troubles that were happening and sort of the issues that were surrounding it. And so this was just an absolutely perfect fit to, maybe make a little bit of difference in the world. So.
That's great. So what might a typical day on your job look like?
Oof, it depends. Yeah, you want to go first?
Our days really vary. We plan to do, say, just a general patrol, and the next thing you know, you're maybe doing a sea lion disentanglement or a whale disentanglement, or there's paperwork to do, or you're out just monitoring a fishery and suddenly something else comes up. It's very varying. We still do a lot of general duty fishery officer work as well, because we have to look at our role and the ecosystem as a whole, because anything that's happening out there has the ability to affect killer whales and all marine mammals and that sort of thing. So we never know what we're going to be doing. Hence why we're a little bit late joining today.
Yeah. As Willie said, it's completely varied, and it's not all romantic. There's, as mentioned, a lot of paperwork as well, and calling people back and trying to engage, and it's a very passionate issue for many people, and so which is great, but it definitely occupies a lot of your time in different ways, right? Because there's always something, and our unit, even though we're called the Whale Protection Unit, we also focus on other marine mammals as well, from pinnipeds like seals and sea lions and sea otters and all sorts of other things. So we're definitely kept busy.
Mm-hmm. I think I heard of a recent entanglement. Was there one just last week, or maybe earlier this week? Was it something you were involved with?
That was late last week in the Nanaimo area. We unfortunately got there just as it was getting untangled. The Nanaimo officers were involved with that, along with Paul Cottrell, our marine mammal coordinator, and his team. So it was a successful disentanglement, which was good news.
And that was up in Nanaimo. So what is your range? Where are you patrolling?
Well,
so we have two teams. So there's one based in Victoria and one based at Annacis on the mainland. So they're focusing more on like the mainland coast and Campbell River, and we're kind of everything else on the island essentially. Obviously we can't be everywhere at once, and it's mostly South Island, SRKW, or Southern Resident Killer Whales, are, you know, the sort of the top tier focus in their range, which is, you know, southern Vancouver Island. But yeah, we could be anywhere from, you know, Tofino to down in, you know, Sydney or Victoria, and sort of all places in between as well. And we try to focus on where the need is the greatest, as best we can.
Mm-hmm. I imagine you have some technology to help you with this incredible area that you're responsible for.
Yeah, so we have a system through well, various places. There's a hydrophone network that actively listens underwater and uses computer programming to actually identify southern resident killer whales, because their language and calls are distinct from other types of killer whales. So you can actually it's easier to pinpoint where they were in fairly real time when the system works, and it's pretty good. And then we also rely on old-fashioned things like sightings and people calling in to let us know where those things are. There's a newly created marine mammal desk, which works in conjunction with a lot of different partners, people on the water, from commercial vessels to enforcement vessels, and different parties that sort of report to this centralized mammal desk that then puts out these basically bulletins to us to let us know where whales are and where they're headed, and what they're doing at the time. And lots of other fancy stuff too. When we're out on the water, you know, we get some pretty neat gizmos as well, as far as you know, binoculars and FLIR, which is sort of night vision stuff. And we also have access, not all the time, but quite often, to the plane, it's called the ASP, which is the Aerial Surveillance Program. So, and that's a great tool because they have extremely high powered cameras, and they can, I mean, they could read a deck of cards in someone's hand from thousands of feet in the air. And so we can use that too for sightings, it's especially handy when it comes to entanglements and those kind of things to get more information on that.
Mm-hmm. We have in our Orca exhibition, which is on now, we have a video that looks at drone technology and how researchers use drones to monitor the health of orcas and observe them from a fairly safe distance, of course, as well. So one of the implementations that's on or coming on, one of the new implementations, I'd like to say, are the 2021 management measures to protect southern resident killer whales. What do people need to know about these measurements?
Well, I think the big thing is it is law. There are some links to the management measures. I think you've brought them up there on the screen, but basically for those waters from Campbell River around to Ucluelet area, and then right out to the international border, including Barkley Sound is included this year, as well as Boundary Bay and that sort of thing. That the distance for all killer whales is 400 meters for all boaters. There's a 7-knot slowdown within a mile of them. We request that people stop fishing, turn off their sounders, and yeah, just maintain that distance is the big one. There's also a separate agreement. The interim order is actually through Transport Canada and through partnerships with Parks Canada, Environment Canada, and Fisheries and Oceans Canada. We would all look at the different aspects of that and assist with the enforcement of it. And there's also what they call a sustainable whale watch agreement with some whale watch companies, where they have a special agreement to get to the 200-meter distance from non-SRKW, so non-southern resident killer whale. So basically your offshores and your bigs, or as some people still call them, transient killer whales. And so that is a current measure as well this year. But those are for only companies that are actually designated. within those waters. So it's the critical habitat and range of southern resident killer whales, which is defined now this year from, as I say, Campbell River and around to Ucluelet.
Now, those measurements are in place already, and they're just for a certain amount of time. Is that right? While the southern residents are here in the waters?
So that is in effect till next May 31st. So the other part of that, though, that people need to be aware of is there is what they call ISZs, or interim sanctuary zones, and there's 3 of those. And there's one off Pender, so North Pender Island, one off Saturna, and one at Swiftsure Bank. And those areas are actually no-go zones for all vessels, other than those that if the only way to access your property or a mooring buoy or something like that is that the only way that you can access it by water is then you would be permitted to go in there and immediately come back out. You're also allowed to go in there for food, social, and ceremonial. So First Nations can go in there and actually do food, social, and ceremonial fishing, as well as for emergencies. And then also kayakers or paddleboarders within 20 meters of shore for the Saturna and Pender ones only.
Okay, how are those sanctuary zones identified?
So they're identified, they use the best science available, and it was agreed upon. They've been revised a little bit, the Pender and the Swiftsure boundaries. And so that information is on the website with the lats and longs. If your vessel is outfitted with AIS, so an automated identification system, it will actually give you the boundaries for it. It will notify you. So basically it's an electric fence around it that will notify your electronic equipment that you're coming up to a boundary, a no-go zone. The other thing is when you update your latest navigational aids, it is on some of those. Not all the companies are doing that. Nobletech at this point is not. But certainly we have the information at our local offices. It's on our website. We're trying to get the signage out there as much as we can and that sort of thing. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
There's a bit of confusion, I think, with the sort of the triggered start date stuff as well, where, you know, with the interim sanctuary zones, those are in place. They're not triggered. They're just in place from as of June 1st. Those are no-go zones for vessels, as Willie said, and as she said, it's based on the best science that is available on where those where the southern resident killer whales are spending a lot of time either traveling or socializing or feeding. Swiftsure Bank being an extremely important area for feeding. We actually attended a lecture not too long ago from a biologist, and they were showing exactly where all these different sightings and sort of hot spots and activity that the southern resident killer whales were doing in these areas. And you can clearly see around Saturna and Pender, those areas are very, very important to them. And it's all about distance when it comes to orca in general. They spend their whole lives basically communicating and almost seeing with sound. And when that's disturbed, be it by depth sounders or motor noise or anything like that, it interrupts how they feed, how they socialize, and how they basically live. You can imagine if someone was just revving an engine right by the side of your head all day, every day, how disruptive that would be to get anything done. It's that, but you're also, it almost blindfolds you in a sense as well, because you have trouble then, you know, locating and finding prey. So yeah, that distance, there's actually new research that says, yeah, that, you know, up to, what is it, 366 meters, they're finding the behavior, especially in female orca, actually changes for feeding and whatnot. Even at that distance, it's interrupting those sort of day-to-day cycles for these endangered animals.
Yeah, we want to give them the best chance they have at finding
Exactly.
prey.
Yeah.
For sure. So if you are out on the water, how can you estimate 400 meters? I have a hard time doing that here. Do you have any sort of guidelines or tricks? How would I know I was the right distance away?
So there is a couple of links on the website that Parks Canada is putting up on ways to help determine that length or that distance. It does get a little bit difficult when you're out on the water and there's no sort of backdrop to you to guesstimate sometimes the distance. But what you can do is look at that with, if you're a golfer, use your rangefinder. We do use rangefinders, and range out to, say, another boat and get used to doing that. Perhaps, set up a marker buoy or something like that, and get used to judging those distances. And that's what we do when we're out, even, is just practice with that stuff. The other thing that you can do is even use your radar and put in your radar, the rings on your radar, and use that as a guesstimate from, okay, we're this far offshore, we're this far from this target, this boat that I can visually see, and that's what my radar is showing me, and that sort of thing. But there's a few different ways, but yeah, it's hard.
It's very tricky.
Yeah.
For sure. Even for people that do it all the time, it can be difficult. We'll actually sit on the boat and just guesstimate distances and then check with, kind of quiz ourselves and then check with a rangefinder, and we're getting pretty good sometimes, actually. It's yeah, there's also there's new sort of handout tools also being developed. Straight Watch, which is one of our partners that we work with, they have developed this little card that's basically it's a like range finding card. So if you hold it up, it has little images of the whale on it. You can basically judge the distance by how small the whale is at certain distances from your eye. So if it looks like about this size, well, then you can maybe estimate that it's that. It's really handy, and we're going to be handing those out, and so will they, throughout the summer to boaters. And a huge part of our job is education. Is trying to get that information out there and be sort of stewards for these animals, and that's the best way to protect them, is the more people that know about the rules and sort of about how these whales exist and live, the better, right? Because then you're creating allies everywhere. So
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think most people.
Please go ahead.
I think most people really want to do the right thing. And that's why it's so important for us to try and get this information out there. There is a lot to learn and to know, and certainly Straight Watch here in Canada and Sound Watch, which is a non-government organization in the US, does a lot of outreach and boater education and that sort of thing, and we rely heavily on them. There's also the Be Whale Wise. So if you are boating, the Be Whale Wise document will go through the different distances that you need to be from all cetaceans in both Canadian and US waters, because it does differ. Hopefully at some point we'll maybe match them up a little bit more with the best science available and that sort of thing, and make it easier for people, because as I say, when they cross the border, the distance is different.
And there's often a lot of confusion there, being, the range of the southern resident killer whale is right on the border, and they go back and forth. And so, getting boaters going both ways, it hasn't been such an issue lately because of the lockdowns, with the current global situation. But, as things are opening up, we're really trying to ramp up that messaging for any Americans or tourists that are planning to hit the water up here too, because as Willie said, those rules are a little different up here.
Essentially, give them their distance. Stay
Yeah.
away, right?
Yeah, that's the biggest message we can give. We just developed new signage that essentially says that, you know, keep your distance from whales and marine mammals, you know, and it is the law to do that. So.
Mhm. And educate yourself if you're going to rent a boat or buy a kayak. Even it's important for us all to know these rules and how to protect
Absolutely.
them.
Yeah,
Mhm.
absolutely. I
Yeah.
think especially, you know, almost, I wouldn't say especially, but in a lot of instances, non-motorized vessels, I think people feel like they're somehow, you know, beyond the standard rules, that it doesn't have a motor, so it's
Right.
okay to go, and that's actually led to serious injury of people. You know, humpback whales breaching. There was a story I saw recently where somebody was too close to a humpback whale and actually ended up in its mouth when it came up, because they're just unaware of these people there. So you can cause harm to whales, you can cause harm to yourself or others, and it's a major disturbance to them with your presence there. So they're not you know, immune in some way from affecting the whales and their behavior. So, you know, the rules are kind of the same for any vessel on the water.
And speaking of that, many people might choose to go whale watching if they're coming on vacation or they're local and they want to experience the whales a bit closer. What questions should we ask a whale watching company to make sure they know these regulations?
But you could ask them that exactly. Are you aware of the regulations? The companies, are they a part of the agreement with Transport Canada? If they are, they'll have a purple, what we call an AV flag. And that way you know that there's a naturalist on board who can actually identify between a southern resident killer whale and other killer whales. Because, of course, as we already said, they're not supposed to be watching southern resident killer whales. And are they abiding by the Be Whale Wise guidelines? Are they aware of them? And those are some questions that they can ask those companies. Most of the companies in the Victoria area are signatories to the Be Whale Wise and are part of the agreement and that sort of thing. But yeah.
And I think, yeah, if you're on one of these excursions and you feel like maybe are we getting too close? Is there an issue here? It's always okay to speak up, and if you're educated enough, at least ask the question, you know, and you know, I mean, people, you know, you might get a sense that, like, you know, is what's happening okay, and it's okay to ask that, right? You know, I think most people are out there trying to do their best by the whales. And so those are very important questions. Yeah.
And I think, you know, the bottom line is if you're a recreational boater or whatever, mistakes happen. These are wild animals, they're unpredictable. And there has been times where we've all been caught off guard and suddenly there's a whale beside us. And it's like, that's what we want to see is what's the responsible thing to do. And that's, you know, if it's safe to do so, turn off your engines. If you're motoring, then slow down right away. Try not to make any abrupt changes. And then either just put them into neutral or shut them off, shut off your sounders, and just wait till they pass and then go about your day. Don't pursue them or anything like that. And just maintain those distances.
Great. That's we are getting right towards the bottom of our hour and almost out of our time. I think that's a really great final messages. Morgan, anything you want to add? Any last words we should have on this topic before we wrap up?
No, I think you know, these things are great. You know, more public engagement is absolutely fantastic. That's exactly what we want to see, and you know, more people educating themselves, and it is such a passionate issue for so many people, and these are incredibly special animals to everyone that, you know, lives on the coast and people that don't. And you know, if we can help make their lives a little easier, as you know, the population of humans keeps growing and growing, then that's the best possible outcome.
Mm-hmm. And I can also give a shout out for whale watching from land. there's some great whale trails around, and Saturna
Absolutely.
Island
Yeah.
has an amazing one.
They do.
So if you're able to watch from land, it's such a special experience. So you hear them.
It's even
Yeah.
better because they then you're seeing them in their absolute, normal behavior, because you're not disturbing them at all at that point, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that's the best way to see them.
Christine is watching from Sydney, and she's asking, where can she pick up some information about these regulations or aids for boaters that you were mentioning?
Well, we have them here at the Victoria office. So we're at 4250 Commerce Circle, or we can, I don't know if you can put up our contact information. I don't mind if my contact information goes up, which would be separate than just the general email box. And we can certainly, I can contact Christina after and we can drop them off or whatever.
That's excellent. Thank
We're also
you.
going to do our best to get those out and have them available at the local marinas and everything to hand out to boaters that want them, as well as brochures for Be Whale Wise and other things. And as I said, we've got that new signage, so we're going to be out in the public and putting up those new signs all over as well, and handing things out. No, you've got
See
a
a blow, go slow.
I've got my if you see a blow, go slow sticker for sure.
Yeah. Jackie will be happy about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, excellent.
So, and that's it. One thing I'd like to say too is there's so many, I mean, we are one part of this. There is so many passionate people from MERS on the North Island to Simres on Saturna, and now joining in with Pender. And, we've got Straight Watch and Sound Watch, and, the public has just been so supportive. And, the killer whales are such an iconic species, and I think we're all trying to do the right thing for them. And yeah, I think just if you see something that you feel is not right, whether that's, as you're boating, or, I mean, something that there's a few things that we didn't really cover. There's, in such a short period of time, it's hard to cover it all, but, with respect to the fishing closures that are coming up, as Morgan was saying, the triggered start for the Gulf Islands. So there's no salmon restrictions yet. Those will come when the presence of SRKW are detected. So southern resident killer whales are detected. And then when they will last to October 31st. And then the other thing is habitat. So there's actual defined critical habitat under the recovery plan for southern resident killer whale and northern resident killer whale. And so if you're seeing stuff that you feel is damage to habitat, that also needs to be reported in. And I don't know, I can send it in to you to go on the website or whatever, our 1-800 number. So 1-800-465-4336. And then we also have an observe, record, report line that you can email and email pictures. But yes,
perfect.
That is really important. And then we can follow up on it with you and get more information or whatever. Parks offices, I just see a question there. Yes, they should have it at the Sydney Parks Canada office. I don't know for sure, but they should have it there.
Great. Well, thank you both so much. We will wrap up our recording here. If folks joined us late, or you missed something and you want to go back, or you want to share this with others, it has been recorded and it will be on the Royal BC Museum's YouTube channel. So please have a look there, and you can get. Also, we've had chats with the with Soundwatch, and those recordings are on our website. Saturna Island, we visited there last year on our outside program, so you can also see it there. And you mentioned Simras. So our next RBCM at Home guest next Tuesday on June the 22nd is the Saturna Island Marine Research and Education Society. And they'll be talking more about their research and what some of their projects and findings are for this year. So please feel free to join us then. And until then, take care of yourselves and one another, and have a wonderful day. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.